Admiral Kim Hyun stood in the massive diplomatic hall of Nexus Prime Station, watching dozens of alien species move about like living artwork. The Zephyrians glowed with internal light, their crystalline bodies catching and reflecting the chambers. Soft illumination. Insectoid creatures from the Arcturus swarm clicked and chittered in complex harmonies. Beings of pure energy floated overhead, their forms shifting like aurora in a night sky. All of them were staring at the humans with barely hidden amusement. "So these are the newcomers," Ambassador Valthara said, her voice translated through the universal communicators. The tall Zephyrian moved with fluid grace, each step creating tiny musical chimes from her crystal-like limbs. The species that still burns chemicals to reach the stars. A wave of laughter rippled through the assembled delegates. Lieutenant Colonel Park Min-ho stood beside his admiral, his military uniform looking crude and primitive next to the elegant biosuits and energy fields worn by other species. His jaw muscles tightened, but he kept his mouth shut. The hive queen of the Arcturus swarm stepped forward, her 6 legs clicking against the polished floor, her compound eyes fixed on the human delegation with the kind of look a scientist might give an interesting insect. "We studied your historical records during your approach to our space," she buzzed. "Your warfare methods are quite rustic. All that shooting and exploding. How wonderfully dramatic." More chuckles echoed around the chamber. Dr. Lee Sara, humanity's chief xenobiologist, cleared her throat and stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. "Honored delegates, we understand that our technology might appear basic compared to your remarkable achievements. We're here to learn from your wisdom and hopefully contribute something useful to this great confederation." An ethereal being that looked like living starlight drifted closer. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "How refreshing to meet such an emotionally expressive species. Your excitement, your nervousness, your anger, we can feel it radiating from you. We evolved beyond such crude, emotional responses thousands of years ago. They're quite inefficient, you know?" Kim Hyun felt his hands clench behind his back. 3 years. 3 years of preparation for this moment, of building faster than light ships, of learning galactic languages and customs. And they were being treated like children, showing crayon drawings to university professors. "Your chemical rockets," Velth continued with what the translator rendered as gentle amusement, "remind us of our own primitive ancestors. It's charming, really, like watching a species take its first steps." A serpentine delegate with scales that shifted colors raised what might have been its head. "Do they still use projectile weapons? Actual metal bullets fired with explosive charges?" "They do." The hive queen clicked excitedly, "and ground vehicles with wheels. Wheels, as if they haven't discovered gravitational manipulation or dimensional folding." The laughter grew louder. Kim Hyun watched species that commanded technology beyond human comprehension treat his people like a curiosity at a zoo. The ethereals could manipulate matter with thought alone. The Zephyrians had ships that could phase through solid matter. The Arcturus swarm had conquered entropy itself, making their hive ships nearly immortal. And humans had chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. "We've prepared appropriate accommodations for your delegation," Valthara announced, gesturing toward a section of the station that looked noticeably less elegant than the main diplomatic quarters. "Section C7 has been converted to suit your environmental needs. It's in the industrial district, more suitable for developing species." The message was clear. Humans weren't diplomats here. They weren't equals. They were the newest members of the galactic community's working class. As they walked through corridors that grew plainer and more utilitarian with each step, Park Min-ho leaned close to his admiral. "Sir, they're not even pretending to respect us." "No," Kim Hyun replied quietly, noting how other species stepped aside when they approached, not out of courtesy, but as if humans might carry some primitive contamination. "They're not. Their quarters turned out to be repurposed cargo storage units. Functional, clean, but clearly temporary. The kind of place you put someone you expected to move along soon. Through the small viewing ports, Kim Hyun could see the magnificent diplomatic suites where real member species lived, with gardens and art galleries and spaces designed for beings of importance. Dr. Lee. Sora sat heavily on one of the basic furniture pieces. I spent 15 years studying xenobiology, learning everything I could about galactic species. I thought I was prepared for cultural differences, but not for being dismissed completely. Park Min-yo finished. Kim Hae-on stared out at the stars visible through their small window. Somewhere out there was Earth, with its billions of humans who had celebrated humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization. If they could see this reception, see how their representatives were being treated like amusing primitives. What do they expect us to do? Dr. Lee asked. Manual labor? Mining operations? Exactly that, Kim Hyun said. They've already decided we're useful for dangerous jobs in places they won't risk their own people. Chemical rockets might be primitive, but they can still carry mining equipment to hostile environments. The reality settled over them like cold water. Humanity had reached for the stars, had achieved faster than light travel, had made contact with galactic civilization, and their reward was to be treated as the galaxy's janitors. Outside their window, alien ships moved with impossible grace through space, their advanced technology making human achievements look like stone tools. But Kim Hyun found himself thinking about those stone tools, and the species that had once wielded them, and what they had eventually become. The aliens were laughing now. But laughter, he reflected, had a way of changing when circumstances shifted. Commander Cho Daeon rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the mining reports one more time. 3 years of hauling rocks from asteroid belts and dangerous outer rim systems had become routine. The work was hard, dirty, and exactly what the galactic community expected from humans. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept drinking it anyway. The emergency alert made him jump. Red lights flashed across his small office, aboard the mining station, and Captain Yoon Ji-won's face appeared in the air above his desk. She looked scared, which was unusual. Yoon Ji-won never looked scared. Commander, you need to contact Admiral Kim right away, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Something's happened to the SR-9. Cho Daeon knew the SR-9 well. It was a small colony world on the outer edge of known space, home to about 50,000 Zephyrian settlers. Not a particularly important place, but peaceful. What kind of something? Just, ... Contact the Admiral, now. 20 minutes later, Admiral Kim Hyun stood in the Human Command Center, looking at data that made no sense. The holographic displays showed the Desert system, with its yellow star burning bright and steady, but where the colony world should have been, there was nothing. Not empty space where a destroyed planet might leave debris, not even the gravitational effects that a missing planet should cause. It was as if the SR-9 had never existed at all. Run the scan again, Kim Hyun ordered. Lieutenant Park Jina worked at her console, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. Same result, sir. No quantum signatures, no gravitational anomalies, no trace radiation. According to our sensors, there was never a planet in that orbit. Dr. Kang Minji, the team's physicist, shook her head slowly. This violates every law of physics I know. Matter and energy can't just stop existing. Even if something destroyed the planet completely, we'd still see evidence. Dust, radiation, something. But the evidence said otherwise. The star system's other planets orbited exactly as they would if the SR-9 had never been there. The local space showed no signs of disruption. It was as if reality had been edited, and the SR-9 had been deleted from the file. Then the next report came in. The Alderaan system, home to a small Arcturus swarm outpost, had suffered the same fate. Then New Kyoto, a human mining colony. Then Viridian Prime, an ethereal research station. The pattern became clear quickly. Isolated settlements, far from major population centers, were vanishing without a trace. Not destroyed, erased. The few survivors who managed to escape in the final moments all told similar stories. They described seeing vast shadows moving between the stars, shapes that hurt to look at directly. Entities that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could process. The refugees called them Devourers. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Confederation held emergency sessions. Admiral Kim Hyun watched the alien delegates from the observation deck, noting their responses with growing concern. The Zephyrians formed committees to study the phenomenon. They assigned teams of their best scientists to develop new scanning technologies and create detailed reports. Ambassador Velthara gave speeches about the importance of understanding before acting. The Arcturus swarm pulled their scattered colonies back to heavily defended hive worlds. The Hive Queen issued proclamations about weathering the storm until the threat passed, as their species had done countless times before. The Ethereal Collective entered deep meditation, seeking spiritual harmony with the cosmic disturbance. They spoke of finding balance with whatever force was causing the disappearances. None of them seemed to understand what they were really facing. In the human section of the station, Kim Hoon gathered his senior staff around a holographic table, covered with tactical displays. Major Song Yoon-ho had been working for days without sleep, analyzing every piece of data they could gather. "Look at this timeline," Song Yoon-ho said, pointing to a series of red dots on the star map. "These aren't random attacks. The Dev are probing our defenses, testing response times, learning how we react to threats." Colonel Bae Solman nodded agreement. "They're hitting isolated targets first, places where they can operate without interference. Classic reconnaissance pattern. The other species don't see it," Kim Hyun said grimly. "They're treating this like some kind of natural disaster or cosmic accident. They're forming study groups while entire worlds disappear." Dr. Kong Minji pulled up another display showing the survivors' reports. The witnesses all described the same thing. The Devourers don't just destroy things, they consume them completely. Matter, energy, even the information that proves something existed. They're eating reality itself, and they're getting bolder, Song Yuno added. The attacks are happening more frequently, and they're moving toward more populated systems. Kim Hyun stared at the tactical display, seeing patterns that his alien colleagues couldn't recognize, or wouldn't recognize. 3 years of being dismissed as primitive had given him insight into how the galactic community thought. They were civilized, peaceful, evolved beyond the crude necessities of warfare. But what they were facing wasn't civilized. It didn't want to negotiate or find peaceful solutions. The Devourers were predators, and the galaxy was their hunting ground. "Sir," Colonel Bae said quietly, "the Confederation Council is still debating whether to send diplomatic envoys to make contact with these things." Kim Hayan almost smiled. "Almost. Of course they are." Outside the station's windows, the stars continued to shine. But somewhere, in that darkness, ancient Hungries were moving closer to the heart of galactic civilization, and the most advanced species in the galaxy were preparing to meet them, with committee meetings and meditation sessions. Only, the humans seemed to understand what was really coming. The Great Council chamber of Nexus Prime had never been so loud or so frightened. Dozens of alien species filled the circular room, their voices creating a chaos of sounds that the universal translators struggled to sort out. Holographic displays floated above the central platform, showing red dots spreading across the galaxy, mapped like a disease. Each red dot marked a star system that no longer existed. Admiral Kim Hine sat in the small observer section with his human staff, watching the panic unfold. For 3 years, these same aliens had treated humans like amusing children. Now those children were the only ones in the room who didn't seem surprised by what was happening. Ambassador Velthara's crystalline body flickered with rapid light patterns, a sign of extreme stress in Zephyrian culture. The diplomatic envoys we sent to make contact with the Devourers are gone, she announced to the chamber. Not killed, consumed completely. They vanished as if they had never existed at all. A wave of frightened murmurs swept through the assembled delegates. The insectoid hive queen of the Arcturus swarm clicked her mandibles in rapid, nervous patterns. Our strongest fortress worlds are falling, she buzzed. The dimensional barriers that have protected us for millennia mean nothing to these creatures. They move through our defenses like they aren't even there. Major Nam, Taeon leaned close to Admiral Kim, Hyun, and whispered, "Sir, look around the room. They're all staring at us now." It was true. The species that had spent years dismissing human intelligence were now looking at the human delegation with something that might have been hope or desperation. A tall, elegant being from the Altarian Republic stood up, its voice trembling with barely controlled fear. 17 core systems have been erased in the past week. Our evacuation ships can't move fast enough. At this rate, the inner systems will be reached within months. We must find a way to communicate with them, insisted an ethereal collective representative, its energy form pulsing with urgent light. All intelligent life can be reasoned with. There must be something they want, some way to negotiate. They want to eat reality itself, Colonel Bae Soman said from the observer section, her voice cutting through the alien chatter. You can't negotiate with hunger. The chamber fell quiet. All eyes turned to the humans. Kim Hyun stood slowly, feeling the weight of dozens of alien gazes. 3 years ago, these same beings had laughed at human primitive technology. Now they were looking at him like he might have answers they desperately needed. Honorable delegates, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. My tactical staff has spent weeks analyzing the Devourer attack patterns. We believe we understand what they are and how they operate. Velthera's crystalline form leaned forward eagerly. Please, Admiral Kim, tell us what you've learned. The Devourers exist partially outside our normal space and time, Kim Yoon explained. They're not completely physical beings as we understand physics, but they have vulnerabilities. During their dimensional transitions, when they're moving between their realm and ours, they can be hurt. Dr. Osunji activated a holographic display that showed human military analysis. The problem is that the weapons needed to damage them during these transitions are ... unconventional. They require technology that can affect the structure of reality itself. The ethereal collective representative pulsed with shocked light. You're talking about reality-altering weapons? Those technologies are forbidden by every treaty in galactic civilization. They're considered weapons of mass destruction on a cosmic scale. And what would you call creatures that can erase entire star systems? Colonel Park Jisoo asked bluntly. We're not facing a conventional enemy that follows the rules of civilized warfare. We're facing extinction. The word hung in the air like a physical weight. Extinction, not defeat, not occupation, not even slavery. Complete erasure from existence. Kim Haeon stepped closer to the center of the chamber. For millennia, your civilizations have evolved beyond violence. You've built a galaxy based on diplomacy, peaceful cooperation, and advanced technology. You've forgotten what total war looks like. He gestured to a small human delegation. We haven't forgotten. We've spent our entire history fighting for survival. We know what it means when the choice is between doing terrible things and not existing at all. The silence in the chamber was complete now. Species that had commanded galactic civilization for thousands of years were listening to lectures on warfare from the beings they'd considered primitive. The Devourers don't want territory, Kim Hyun continued. They don't want resources or power or anything we can give them. They want to consume existence itself, and they won't stop until everything is gone. You can't negotiate with that kind of enemy. Velthera's light patterns flickered with desperate hope. But you believe they can be fought? Yes, Kim Hyun replied. Simply. But not by your rules. Not with your weapons. Not with your ethics. Major Nam Taeon stood and activated another holographic display, showing human weapon designs that made several alien delegates recoil in horror. We'll need to use technologies your treaties banned. We'll need to accept casualties on a scale your civilizations haven't seen in millennia. And we'll need to do things that will make you question whether survival is worth the price. The Hive Queen's mandibles clicked nervously. What are you asking for? Kim Haein looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who had once dismissed him. Operational authority, complete command of military resources, and permission to fight this war the way it needs to be fought. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Give us that authority, and we'll save your civilizations. But don't ask us to fight with one hand tied behind our backs. The Devourers certainly won't be holding back. Admiral Kim Haein stood on the bridge of the human battleship Indomitable, watching something that should have been impossible. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the beautiful blue-green world of Wriggle 7, the ancient home world of the Zephyrian people. Around it, space itself was bending and twisting as massive shadows moved between dimensions. The Devourers had come in force. Dozens of them phased in and out of normal reality, their forms too complex for human minds to fully understand. They existed in 11 dimensions at once, feeding on the very foundations of space and time itself. Where they touched reality, stars flickered and died. Sir, the Zephyrian defense fleet is gone, reported Captain Lim Seojin from his destroyer squadron. The Devourers consumed them in less than 10 minutes. Where all that stands between these things and 50 billion civilians. Kim Haein nodded, calmly. He had expected this. The aliens had learned to fight clean wars over thousands of years. They used precise weapons, avoided civilian casualties, and followed ancient rules of civilized combat, against an enemy that ate reality itself. Such tactics were useless. All human fleets, he announced over the communication network, implement Protocol Nightmare. What happened next would haunt the nightmares of alien observers for generations to come. Captain Lim Seojin led his destroyer squadron directly toward the largest group of Devourers. Instead of firing weapons from a safe distance, like the Zephyrians had tried, he ordered his ships to fly straight into the creatures' feeding zones. The aliens watching from other ships screamed warnings as the destroyers began to be consumed by the cosmic entities. But that had been the plan, as the began to feed on the human ships. Hidden reality warping minds inside the vessels activated. The explosions didn't happen in normal space. They tore through the dimensional barriers where the creatures existed, hitting them in dimensions the aliens didn't even know existed. The Devourers writhed in what might have been pain as their extra-dimensional forms were ripped apart. Commander Park Hae-hoon took control of the next phase. Her voice was calm and professional as she gave orders that made the alien observers feel sick. Begin bombardment of Rydell 7's outer moons. Target the inhabited mining stations first. Commander, Ambassador Valthera's horrified voice came over the communication channel. There are 12 million people on those moons. I know, Park Hae-hoon replied without emotion. She watched as her weapons turned entire moons into fragments of rock and metal, then used gravity manipulators to accelerate the debris to near light speed. The improvised kinetic weapons slammed into devourer formations with the force of small stars exploding. 12 million people died in seconds, but the attack worked. Several devourers were knocked out of their dimensional phase states, making them vulnerable to conventional weapons for brief moments. Valthara's crystalline form flickered with lights of pure horror as she watched the human tactics. This is monstrous. You're murdering your own allies to hurt the enemy. Colonel Im Jung-woo didn't look away from his targeting computer as he replied, better some die so the rest can live. If we lose here, everyone dies anyway. The Zephyrians and other aliens couldn't understand it. They had spent millennia evolving beyond such brutal calculations. The idea of sacrificing millions to save billions was something their advanced moral systems couldn't process. But humans had never forgotten the mathematics of survival. The battle's turning point came when Major General Han Ji-young deployed humanity's most terrible innovation. They had spent months studying the few devourer tissue samples they could gather, learning how beings that existed in multiple dimensions could feel pain. The weapons they created were designed not to kill quickly, but to cause maximum suffering to creatures that had never known fear. The reality pain generators activated across the human fleet. The devourers, ancient cosmic entities that had consumed entire galaxies without effort, suddenly found themselves experiencing something they had never felt before: agony. The weapons reached into their extra-dimensional forms and made them suffer in ways that violated the basic structure of reality. For the first time in millions of years, the devourers stopped attacking and began to retreat. Dr. Shin Yubin monitored the quantum readings from her science station, her voice filled with amazed disbelief. "Admiral, they're pulling back from 17 star systems. The entities are actually running away." Around Rigel 7, the massive shadow forms began to phase out of normal space, fleeing back to whatever realm had spawned them. The planet was saved, though at a cost that made the alien survivors stare at their human rescuers with expressions of grateful terror. Kim Hyun watched the last devourer disappear from his sensors, then turned to address the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. The other species had seen what humans were truly capable of when unleashed. They had witnessed tactics that their civilized minds found horrifying, strategies that treated entire populations as acceptable losses in the greater war for survival. "This is only the beginning," he announced calmly. "They know we can hurt them now, so they'll be more careful, more dangerous." Velthara's shaken voice came over the communication channel. "What do you mean?" Kim Hyun smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "I mean, we've shown them we're not like the other species in this galaxy. We don't fight to preserve civilization, we fight to win. And now they'll try to destroy us before we can do to them what we just did here." He looked at the tactical displays showing devourer movement patterns throughout the galaxy. They were regrouping, learning, preparing for a war against an enemy they had never encountered before, a species that understood that sometimes, to save everything, you had to be willing to sacrifice anything. "Prepare the fleet for deep space operations," Kim Hyun ordered. "We're going hunting." The reality cascade device floated in the center of the human fleet, like a mechanical star. It was the size of a small moon, covered in warning lights and energy fields that made the space around it shimmer and bend. Admiral Kim Hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his hand resting on the activation control that could save or destroy the galaxy dot around him. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council was being broadcast from Nexus Prime. The holographic images of alien delegates filled his command center, their faces showing pure terror as they realized what the humans were about to do. "Admiral Kim, you must reconsider," Ambassador Velthara pleaded. Her crystalline body was covered in stress fractures that made her look like she might shatter at any moment. The reality cascade weapon could kill trillions of innocent beings. Entire star systems will be erased from existence. The ethereal collective representative pulsed with desperate light patterns. The weapon doesn't just destroy matter and energy. It damages the basic structure of space and time itself. The effects could spread throughout the galaxy for millions of years. Kim Hyun looked at the tactical display showing the Void Nebula, a dark region of space where the Devourers had built their anchor point into normal reality. From there, they could continue their assault on the galaxy, consuming worlds and civilizations until nothing remained. The human scientists had calculated that destroying the anchor point would banish the Devourers back to their home dimension permanently. They had also calculated the cost. 17 star systems will be destroyed, Colonel Anmaran reported from her station. The cascade effect will make large sections of space uninhabitable for thousands of years. Conservative estimates suggest 4 trillion casualties. The Arcturus Hive Queen's mandibles clattered with terror. 4 trillion deaths. How can you even consider such a thing? Because the alternative is the extinction of all life in the galaxy. Kim Haen replied calmly. The Devourers have consumed over 200 systems in the past year. They're not slowing down, they're accelerating. Dr. Park Jian pulled up the projection models on the main screen. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach the core systems within 18 months. After that, it's just a matter of time before every living thing in the galaxy is erased. But surely there must be another way. The Altarian Republic, Delegate pleaded. Some method that doesn't require such massive destruction. We've tried every other option, Captain Zhou Sunwu said from the weapon control station. Diplomatic contact failed. They consumed our envoys. Conventional weapons are useless against beings that exist partially outside reality. The only thing that has worked is extreme force, and this is the most extreme force we can generate. Kim Hyun watched the alien delegates argue among themselves. Their advanced civilizations struggling to accept what primitive humans had already understood. Sometimes survival required choices that civilized beings couldn't make. Sometimes the price of continuing to exist was higher than anyone wanted to pay. The weapon is ready to fire, sir, Zhou Sunwu reported. All human ships are at minimum safe distance. Admiral, please, Velthara begged. There are entire species in those 17 systems, cultures that have existed for millions of years. Art, literature, scientific discoveries that can never be replaced. I know, Kim Yoon said quietly. I've read their histories. I've studied their cultures. Some of them are more beautiful and advanced than anything humanity has ever created. He paused, looking at the faces of beings who had once dismissed humans as crude and primitive. But they'll all be dead within 2 years anyway if we don't act now. The Devourers don't appreciate art or literature. They consume everything equally. The countdown reached its final moments. Kim Hyun could see the terror in the alien delegates' eyes as they realized he was actually going to do it. This species they had treated as manual laborers was about to make a decision that would reshape the galaxy forever. Reality Cascade weapon armed, Zhou Sunwu announced, firing in 10 seconds. Stop. The ethereal collective representative pulsed frantically. We forbid this action under every treaty of galactic civilization. Kim Yoon smiled coldly. Your treaties didn't stop the Devourers. They won't stop us either. The weapon fired. Reality screamed. Space itself convulsed around the void nebula as the cascade effect tore through dimensions humans couldn't even name. The Devourer's anchor point, buried in the quantum foundation of normal spacetime, was ripped apart with violence that made stars look like candles. The cosmic entities that had terrorized the galaxy for months were sucked back into whatever nightmare realm had spawned them. Their connection to reality severed permanently, but the cost was exactly what the humans had predicted. 17 star systems collapsed into dimensional wounds that would never heal. 4 trillion beings died in seconds as the cascade effect swept through their worlds. Vast sections of space became uninhabitable wastelands where the laws of physics no longer worked properly. In the aftermath, as the galaxy counted its dead and surveyed the damage, the surviving alien civilizations looked at humanity with new eyes. These beings they had once considered primitive had just demonstrated something that made their advanced technologies seem like toys. Humans could calculate genocide as an acceptable price for survival. Admiral Kim Hyun addressed the shattered Confederation Council one final time, his words carrying the weight of 4 trillion deaths. You laughed when you thought we were primitive, he said calmly. You screamed when you realized we were necessary. Now pray you never discover what we become when we're no longer restrained by your civilization. The silence that followed was complete. Humanity had saved the galaxy, but in doing so, they had revealed themselves as something far more terrifying than the Devourers they had defeated. They were a species that could destroy trillions of lives with the same calm efficiency. They brought to mining asteroids. The galaxy was safe, but it would never again forget what monsters had made it so.